Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is TVP World. You're watching World News. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and these are the latest headlines. Presidents, prime ministers, and senior officials are gathering in Finland today as the region faces mounting pressure to enhance security in the Baltic Sea. Our chief political correspondent, Aaron Diamond, is in Helsinki and has this report.
A real power troop is assembling here in the Baltic in Helsinki. We're at the presidential palace of the Finnish President Alexander Stubb. He's co-hosting this summit with Prime Minister of Estonia, Kristen Michel, and it is all about securing the stretch of water that this presidential palace looks out onto, the Baltic Sea. Remember, there have been a string of incidents in the Baltic Sea since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Anchors dragging along the sea floor, suspected acts of sabotage like internet cables being cut, and NATO has now sent 10 ships to guard underwater infrastructure. But remember, in November, Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk made, well, a very similar assessment, a very similar recommendation to the NATO Baltic countries. Here is Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk this morning.
We have proposed reinforced patrols in the Baltic Sea, somewhat along the lines of air policing, which is patrolling the airspace over Poland and other NATO countries located near Russia. It is really about deterrence, but also effectively monitoring who is entering the Baltic Sea, with what and whether they pose a threat. Today there will finally be a meeting with the participation of the NATO Secretary-General at the invitation of the President of Finland, where we will talk about practical actions to secure the Baltic Sea from what's most likely Russian sabotage.
So there you go, Donald Tusk urging Navy patrols back in November, and again reiterating that today among some of the dignitaries here this morning will be Prime Minister Tusk, NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, even as he himself faces an election that he is very unlikely at this point to win, according to the polls back home in Germany. And just yesterday, Mark Rutte made a significant comment, if you like, to the European Parliament, saying that if defence spending doesn't rise, then MEPs should, quote, get out your Russian language courses or go to New Zealand. I'm sure he will echo that similar sentiment here today. They will soon arrive here, then they will go behind closed doors, and a final press conference, all before midday Warsaw time, on a morning blitz of diplomacy.
And regarding the topic, we have breaking update that Poland will commit 4 ships to the NATO Baltic Policing Force, according to foreign ministry sources that has told TVP World, so we'll keep you posted. Meanwhile, speaking at the Baltic Security Summit, Swedish Prime Minister Ulf Kristersson emphasized the need to strengthen security in the Baltic Sea. He highlighted Sweden's unique position as the country with the longest coastline among all Baltic Sea nations.
Sweden has the longest coastline of all the Baltic Sea nations, and it's obviously of extreme importance for us to be able to rely on the safety and security of the infrastructure and, of course, of the naval traffic in the Baltic Sea. And therefore, it's of utmost interest for us to compare notes today, to discuss the recent damages and to discuss the potential reasons behind them.
According to reports, Monday evening marked the largest attack by Ukrainian Armed Forces on Russian targets this year. Drone strikes were launched in multiple regions across Russia, reportedly targeting industrial facilities such as oil refineries and chemical plants. Following the attack, restrictions were imposed at several Russian airports. Russian media claims that around 200 drones were used in the assaults. Meanwhile, in the early hours of Tuesday, Kyiv's air defense systems were activated as Russia carried out a drone attack on a Ukrainian capital. 10 EU countries are advocating for a ban on Russian liquefied natural gas. Poland, currently holding the presidency of the Council of the European Union, is among them. The participating EU nations aim to close existing loopholes and cut off Russia's ability to profit from LNG sales to Europe. However, the initiative is likely to face opposition from Slovakia and Hungary, 2 EU members that support continued trade with Moscow. Since the start of its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022, Russia has reportedly earned 200 billion euros from oil and gas sales to the EU. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius made a surprise visit to Kyiv on Tuesday, following his attendance at the Big Five meeting in Warsaw, where the Polish defense minister hosted his German, French, Italian, and UK counterparts. The German defense minister is expected to meet with Ukrainian officials to discuss aid for Ukraine and assess the country's current military situation. Pistorius traveled to Kyiv after the defense minister's meeting in Warsaw, where he and his counterparts discussed continued support for Ukraine and cooperation on European security initiatives. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy confirmed on Monday night that he held a detailed conversation with his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron about military support for Kyiv and a potential deployment of partner contingents on Ukrainian territory. According to Zelenskyy, the discussion was extensive and thorough. The leaders addressed military support, various forms of defense, and the possibilities for further arms packages to Ukraine. The presidents also discussed investments in missile procurement and training of Ukrainian forces. Now, Zelenskyy noted that this would include the training of Ukrainian soldiers in France. The conversation with Macron follows talks between the French president and UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer on January 10th, where they discussed further support and security guarantees for Ukraine. The French president remains a key advocate for bolstering Ukraine's defense amid the ongoing Russian aggression. Slovakia's Prime Minister Robert Fico has publicly invited Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy to discuss gas supplies. The offer follows Kyiv's decision to halt Russian gas deliveries through its territory.
Such a meeting will create good preconditions for an open discussion on gas supplies to Slovakia and other countries via Ukraine, on possible technical solutions taking into account the expiration of the contract between the respective Ukrainian and Russian companies on December 31st, 2024, on the impact of the suspension of gas transit via Ukraine, on the declining competitiveness of the European economy, and on the development of bilateral Slovakian-Ukrainian relations.
In response to these statements, the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has invited Robert Fico to visit Kyiv on Friday. Now, in addition to military efforts, Ukraine is intensifying its financial battle against Russia. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy has introduced a decree imposing sanctions on a new group of Russian financial entities and submitted draft legislation to impose criminal liability for attempts to bypass these financial restrictions. Zelenskyy's decree targets Russia's financial sector, affecting 140 entities. The Ukrainian president added that Kyiv will continue working with its partners to coordinate the pressure on the Kremlin. The draft law aligns with international sanction practices. In a post on social media platform Telegram, Zelenskyy emphasized that, quote, the greater the pressure on the aggressor, the closer we are to peace. Zelenskyy called sanctions a vital tool for exerting pressure on Russia and its war collaborators and confirmed the bill's submission to Ukraine's parliament for further action. The decree targets 75 individuals, all Russian citizens, 63 entities registered in Russia, and 2 companies based in the British Virgin Islands. Former Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki is expected to become the new chairman of the European Conservatives and Reformist Party on Tuesday. The party will elect a new leader to replace its current head, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. Mateusz Morawiecki led Poland's conservative Law and Justice government from 2017 to 2023. He's an economist with a background in banking. The ECR is the 4th largest party in the European Parliament, with members including Brothers of Italy, Poland's Law and Justice Party, the Czech Civic Democratic Party, and the Sweden Democrats. Thousands of Romanian citizens took to the streets of Bucharest to demand a runoff in the country's presidential election. This follows the Romanian Constitutional Court's decision to annul the first round of voting in early December 2024 due to alleged foreign interference in the electoral process.
This demonstration in the Romanian capital Bucharest marked the biggest protest yet in the wake of November's cancelled presidential election.
A good portion of electoral, they are sort of lost, if not very angry.
I came here to show with this symbolic coffin what happened in Romania.
The right-wing populist Alliance for the Unity of Romanians called on their supporters to join the rally.
We protest against the coup d'etat that happened on December 6th, and we're calling for a return of democracy with a reinstatement of the second round of the presidential elections.
Romania's constitutional court annulled the results of the first round of the election, citing Russian influence through the illegal use of digital technology.
We see this efficiency of disinformation spread by social platforms in the countries, in the societies that are deeply polarized, where the level of social trust is very, very low.
The winner, the right-wing and populist Kyiv Georgescu, was accused of using undeclared sources of funding.
We need more transparency. We still have to declassify a lot of reports.
And there is a sense of urgency.
Every day that drags out more, Kyiv Georgescu wins more support.
The new presidential election in Romania is scheduled to take place on May 4th, with a runoff planned 2 weeks later. Kyiv Georgescu is eligible to run for office again. Experts say Romania serves as a lesson.
Poland is worryingly similar to what we see in Romania.
Polish citizens will also head to the polls in May to elect their new president.
A week before transitioning the presidency to Donald Trump, Joe Biden praised his administration's foreign policy achievements. According to Biden, U.S. adversaries are weaker than they were 4 years ago, despite ongoing global crisis.
Before I took office, 9 NATO allies were spending 2% of their GDP on defense. Now 23 are spending 2%. Look at the Indo-Pacific. We made partnerships stronger and created new partnerships to challenge China's aggressive behavior and to rebalance power in the region. We did it, what few thought was possible, to build the first ever trilateral partnership between the United States, Japan, and South Korea. We helped Ukrainians stop Putin. And now, nearly three years later, Putin has failed to achieve any of his strategic objectives. He has failed thus far to subjugate Ukraine, failed to break the unity of NATO, and failed to make large territorial gains. But there's more to do. We can't walk away. We rallied 50 nations to stand with Ukraine, not just in Europe, but for the first time in Asia as well.
Tensions on the Korean peninsula continue. The South Korean military has confirmed that North Korean forces launched an unidentified projectile towards the Sea of Japan. The South Korean Joint Chief of Staff confirmed the activity in a statement, adding that further details about the launch are still under investigation. Seoul's acting president vowed to respond sternly to Pyongyang's provocations. Japanese authorities confirmed that the projectiles landed outside Japan's waters. North Korea's last missile test occurred on January 6, when it claimed to have launched a medium-range hypersonic ballistic missile. The test marked Pyongyang's first provocation of the year, with the latest launch being the second ahead of upcoming inauguration of U.S. President-elect Donald Trump. Polish tennis player Hubert Hurkacz has advanced to the second round of the Australian Open after defeating Dutchman Talan Griekspoor in straight sets. Currently ranked 17th in the world, Hubert Hurkacz faced Talan Griekspoor, ranked 40th. Previous matchups between the two had been closely contested, but this time the Pole secured a decisive victory, winning 7-5, 6-4, 6-4. The next round of the prestigious Australian Open, Hurkacz will take on Serbian player Milomir Kecmanovic. And with that, we conclude this edition of World News. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.